All right, so you've decided to move to Southwest Florida. Well, before you hop on a flight or load up your car, I've got some things to talk to you about. And some of them are probably gonna shock you. So let's get into it. So I've been here now since 2010, and the one thing that totally caught me off guard is this crazy, ridiculous Florida man thing. And let me tell you, it is real. Florida man is alive and well. So Florida man is not really a specific person though. He's not always even a man. Sometimes it's crazy Florida woman. I'm not sure why this is specific to Florida though. I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with the heat and humidity that messes with people's brains and makes them do crazy shit. Here are a few examples. This, let's call him well-seasoned golfer, decided in the middle of a round of golf that because there was an alligator off to the side of the course. Yes, it does happen a fair amount. In fact, the golf course is the place that I most often see gators. But this ridiculous guy decides to try his hand at gator wrestling. I feel like you have to say it that way because anyone who does it says it like that. Or this other guy here who's out pressure washing his roof during the middle of a storm, dressed as Spider-Man. Yes. Who pressure washes their roof in the middle of the storm, especially dressed as Spider-Man? So just be prepared because you are bound to see Florida man at some point after you move here. He might even be you. Okay, enough of the silly stuff though. Let's get into the important stuff like the weather, employment opportunities, cost of living, the lifestyle, and the culture of Southwest Florida, because these are the things that are going to be important to you if you're looking to move here. First up, let's talk cost of living, since that is typically the number one question I'm asked about. Historically, Florida has been considered a very affordable place to retire. However, that's not really the case anymore. As a state, just slightly above the national average in terms of overall cost of living. And many of the areas here in Southwest Florida are right around that state average of about roughly 3% above the national average now. Though there are some places like Punta Gorda and Port Charlotte, which are about 7% below the national average and 10% below the state and area average. As well as some of the even smaller areas, more inland towns, which are as much as 20 or 25% below the area, state, and national averages. So there are still a few areas in Southwest Florida that are definitely affordable. But a big part of why the costs have gone up so much is that Florida has experienced some of the highest rates of inflation in the country over the past few years, with a big part of that being insurance and housing related costs. Like, of course, home prices themselves. And since those home prices have gone up, so have the property taxes. Even though many of the municipalities in the area have reduced their property tax rates, it hasn't been nearly as much as the values have gone up. Though it is still significantly less expensive than many of the northern cities that you might be moving from. So if you're coming from states like New York, New Jersey, or Illinois, you may still be better off down here financially, as well as getting the better weather. And especially if you're coming from the bigger cities in those states, knowing that many of them have a higher overall cost of living as well than many parts of Southwest Florida. Now let's talk about quality of life. Do you like the outdoors and sunshine and maybe the water? Then Southwest Florida is probably the place for you. The vast majority of the activities revolve around the outdoors and in some way, shape, or form the water. Even if you don't necessarily want to get into the water itself, the beach still revolves around the water too, because without water, it's not really a beach, is it? It's pretty much just a pile of sand at that point. So in regards to all of the outdoor activities revolving around the water, of course, there is boating, fishing, shelling, kayaking, canoeing, paddleboarding, swimming, either in pools or natural bodies of water. Plus, you have the choice of saltwater with the Gulf of Mexico or freshwater with all of the lakes, rivers, and streams, where you can do virtually all of those things. And if you aren't into the water, there are still country clubs galore for you if you are a golfer, tennis player, or pickleballer. And then of course there's also tons of nature preserves and the lesser known hidden public beach areas if you like to hike in nature. Just don't expect a ton of elevation change on your hikes because Florida is pretty much flat. There are also some cities and towns that have many different public parks with all kinds of things like walking trails, exercise equipment, soccer and baseball fields, basketball, tennis, and pickleball courts, as well as playgrounds for the younger ones. There are even a few very active skate parks and BMX tracks, as well as a couple of mud parks for those that are into some of the more extreme sports. And if your interests are a bit more of the shopping, dining, or even drinking variety, then there are definitely plenty of places for all of that as well. All up and down Southwest Florida, from the high-end shops and restaurants in Naples and Sarasota, on Fifth Ave, at the Mercado or St. Armand Circle, or UTC, to the outlet malls in Estero or Ellington, as well as the eclectic local boutique shops scattered throughout all of these amazing cities. And there are such incredible restaurants, bars, and wine bars in every one of our lovely cities. You'll never run out of new places to try if you wanted to try a new spot every night. Now that being said, it can be a bit hot and humid in Southwest Florida. We're gonna talk more about that when we get to the weather. But if you wanna get indoors and have things to do inside as well, there's a ton of museums, theaters, both movie and stage theaters, as well as sporting events, professional, college, and kind of in between semi-pro as well. Now, another part of the quality of life question is many people asking why there are so many big gated communities in Southwest Florida. And the answer to that, again, leads back to quality of life and lifestyle. Most people who come to live in Florida come from somewhere else. And most don't come in large groups, either family or friend groups, all at the same time. So these large gated communities offer a centralized amenity with a built-in place for people to gather and meet one another to make new friends. And the gates provide a bit more peace of mind for the many people who make Florida only a part-time home as well. So with so many different choices of cities and communities, this is why we really like to have a detailed conversation with our clients before you come down to help work through and discuss all of the nuances of what you really want your lifestyle to look like once you're here. So please give us a call and let's talk about it. Now, all of that outdoor lifestyle stuff leads us right into a conversation about the weather, because the amazing weather here is really what allows us to do all of those awesome things outside. Although it isn't all sunshine and rainbows. But let's start with the conversation about the winter and spring weather, because that's really when everyone is here and is the most enjoyable part of the year weather-wise. So November through April, the average high temperatures run between 72 degrees and in January and 82 degrees in April. And the average lows run 57 to 67, also January and April. And we only average 3 to 4 days per month of rain. So in general, really beautiful weather, right? So this is why everyone wants to be in Florida for these months. And then the shoulder months of October and May, with average highs of 84 and 86 respectively, are not that far off those numbers either. But then June through September, even though the average numbers don't sound too crazy, once you add the humidity on top of the high temperatures, because of the significant increase in rainfall, the weather here is enough to make a steam room jealous. Those average temps creep up to the very high 80s and even low 90s in August, and it rains typically 12 to 15 days per month, so roughly about half the month on average. So be prepared. And it's way too hot to wear a raincoat, so you're either going to need an umbrella or just carry a swimsuit with you everywhere you go. Us locals typically keep multiple umbrellas or just a big blue tarp in our car to hold up over our heads in case of a storm. But inevitably, we're going to stop somewhere to just run in real quick and not grab the umbrella on the way in, and 5 minutes later, we're back at the door of the store, staring out at our car in the parking lot through the pouring rain. The other weather thing you really must know about is hurricanes. It's not something we like to talk about. They don't happen super often, but they can happen in a year and sometimes even multiple times a year, primarily during those summer months. Our hurricane season is June 1st through November 30th, with the height of the season, which is when the storms are most likely to occur, being mid-August to late October. Hurricane season is tough when you have been in Florida for a while and your area hasn't had any significant storms for a few years, because we tend to get a little complacent and don't bother checking our supplies each year. Or if we do check them, we don't end up getting around to replacing them when needed. And then when a storm is on the way, everyone runs out to buy the stuff and there either isn't enough for everyone or you're standing in endless lines. Or of course, the worst is the store happens to be out, you're forced to run around to multiple places or pay crazy prices online last minute on those online marketplaces to people trying to price gouge you. So just keep this stuff in mind. Don't be like us locals and prepare early and double check your stash every year to make sure that you have what you need well before a storm comes, and also check the expiration dates on your stuff at the end of hurricane season so that you can use any of that stuff that isn't going to make it until the next season. Also, remember, batteries go bad and corrode, so take them out of your flashlights and radios if you're storing those only to be used exclusively in your storm prep kits. And if you have them in your kit for a while, use them in other things like TV remotes, or buy new ones for your kit every couple years. Also, when you buy a home here, it's a really good idea to test your hurricane shutters if you have them, for a couple of reasons. One being that it is really good to know how they work, how they go on and off. And two, you want to make sure that you have everything you need. A lot of people don't realize this and run into problems when it's time to put them on. You got a storm coming and you don't have your stuff. Most of the manual installed hurricane shutters require lots of small pieces like nuts, bolts, and washers that are easy to drop and lose. And some have special drill bits or things that really help make installation quicker and easier. And then others, like accordion and roll down shutters, regardless of if they are manual or power, can get jammed up with dirt, rocks, and other debris when not used or lubricated regularly. And then number 3, and I'm sorry, I know I got kind of off on a tangent, but to make sure you can physically install or work them, because the metal panels are not super heavy, but they are very, very awkward and hard to hold up while putting bolts in, especially on a huge ladder 15 to 20 feet in the air on a 2-story home if you have one. All of these things I know from experience, which is why I'm telling you this now. And even the manual accordion or roll down shutters can be tough if they are slightly out of alignment or have debris in those tracks. Even those power roll down shutters, which are really, really nice, but they can be difficult too, especially if the power is already out or if they aren't properly maintained. So that's why I say it is best to check these things on your new home and regularly to make sure everything is still working as it should. The other thing, weather/hurricane related, that you need to consider is water, as in flooding. Most people think hurricane and only think about the wind and possible damage from that, but most forget that unless they have personally experienced it before, that hurricanes can also bring significant rainfall and/or storm surge, which is water pushed in from the ocean, or in our case, the Gulf of Mexico, which can push far upstream through rivers and canals as well. That's one of those things there's very little that can be done to stop from happening, except for elevation. This means you want your home to be as high as possible, either on the ground, but the ground elevated, where they build up the land before they build the home, or in some cases, like many of the coastal areas, even on stilts. So it's just something to keep in mind and something we will always discuss with you when we're helping you look for your next home. Like I said, hurricanes don't happen all that frequently, but when they do, they are stressful. That's why I like to talk about them early and often. But the beauty of hurricanes is that we do get advance notice that they're coming, if there is a beauty, and not minutes in advance like tornadoes, but days in advance. Yes, the direction can shift last minute, But last minute for a hurricane is still typically at least 12 to 24 hours. Like, for example, I wasn't even planning on putting my shutters up 2 days before Hurricane Ian hit. Then it shifted, I made the adjustment, got them up. It's not fun. You gotta make last minute adjustments sometimes, but like I said, last minute, it was 24 hours in advance when we knew that it was shifting and coming to us. So plenty of time to get prepared. Now, the way I personally like to prepare for hurricanes is to prepare to leave, like get me out of here, if one is coming our direction. After staying through Ian, personally, I think that if you do not need to stay due to your job or some other significant reason, that you should definitely just pack up a bag with all your travel stuff and the most important things and take off on a vacation if a storm's coming that way. That means not only do you not have to be at risk of being a casualty of the storm, and will also not risk being a burden on the emergency workers during or after the storm. And then you just come back a week later after the roads are cleared and the power's back on, hopefully, and see how your home fared. Because while you might be able to minimize the damage if you are here to do something, if you see something happening that you didn't happen to prepare for or expect, when you're doing that, you're also putting your life at risk to protect stuff. And the thing is, that stuff can be replaced. Your life can't. So that's my advice and philosophy on hurricanes in a nutshell. If they're coming and you don't need to be there, leave. All right, so now let's talk about jobs. What, did you think everyone in Southwest Florida was retired? No, of course not. There has to be someone down here to serve those retirees their drinks at the bar or by the pool at 11 a.m. after all, right? Well, there are a lot more opportunities than that available here, actually. In fact, the number one issue I hear from most business owners throughout the area is they can't find enough employees. And it's pretty much in every industry, from the bartenders and servers in restaurants to electricians, plumbers, teachers, nurses, doctors, and even tech. I know most people don't think of Southwest Florida as a tech hotspot, especially being a big popular retiree place, but you'd actually be really surprised. There are quite a few tech opportunities in the area. And it isn't just small business owners either that are having a hard time. There are a number of large corporations that call Southwest Florida home, such as Gartner, Hertz, Chico's, and Arthrex. Yes, Southwest Florida has historically been a retirement and tourist area, but over the last 15 to 20 years, the local governments have done a great job of attracting a ton of additional industry here. So yes, of course, we still have tourism and hospitality. They're still a massive part of our economy here, but there are a ton of other opportunities now as well. So definitely check it out. Now let's talk about the culture here in Southwest Florida. Of course, Southwest Florida has always been known for its laid-back, beach bum, and sometimes even sleepy fishing village vibe. And it is the South, so you're definitely going to find that most of the locals to be super friendly, except maybe during tourist season after they've been stuck in traffic all day, trying to get to and from work or pick the kids up from school. But typically, they're willing to give you the shirt off their back, especially if you're their new neighbor. I know when we moved into our house, we had a 6-pack of beer left on our doorstep by one of the neighbors when we moved in, and we've always tried to return the favor and do that for any of our new neighbors that have moved into the neighborhood after us. We all share landscapers, pool companies, and I know that whenever I need a tool or need help moving something heavy, I know I can always just go knock on any one of my neighbors' doors, and they'll either lend me the tool or come help. And there have been many nights when I'm out walking the dog and we'll just be stopping to say hi to someone, and we'll end up hanging out with half the neighborhood for the next 2 hours, just chatting, having a beer, or whatever. Sometimes the bed of a pickup truck can be just as good of a place to meet the new neighbors or meet your neighbors and make friends as the neighborhood clubhouse or community pool. Now, in terms of cultural things to do in Southwest Florida, it's a very, very diverse cultural scene. There's tons of art galleries, museums, music festivals, culinary events, plus, like we mentioned before, plenty of college and professional sports teams throughout Southwest Florida, and stuff going on throughout the entire year. So each city, even the smaller cities, have their own things going on. So if nothing is happening in, say, Fort Myers, for example, there's probably something going on in Cape Coral or Punta Gorda, Naples, or Sarasota, or even on one of the islands. So as long as you're willing to move around a little bit and really think of Southwest Florida as kind of a larger region that you're willing to explore and hang out in, you'll typically be able to find something somewhere that interests you. And there's always tons of live music happening at the local bars. Typically each of them have a few nights a week. So if you find a couple spots you like, you can pretty much have your pick of a good drink and live music any night of the week. Now, I can't promise that the music will always be good, but as long as the drinks are good, you can relax, have a laugh, dance, maybe sing along with the band and make them a little better, maybe make them a little worse, who knows? But you'll never have a dull moment in Southwest Florida if you're hanging out like that. So if this sounds like the place for you, and now you need to figure out which particular part of Southwest Florida you want to call home, call or text us and let's talk about it. Or check out these other great videos about the pros and cons of the different cities and towns throughout Southwest Florida, and let me know which one seems like the spot for you.